So if someone's sitting in this seat, I know that you've done some media trainings in the past. I mean, what kind of coaching would you give somebody if they clam up or maybe they get nervous, or what are some tips and tricks that you can share with us?
Well, you know, that's a good question. I mean, it's true whether you're here live in studio. Most of our guests are by telephone. But I can tell if a guest is nervous, even on the phone. And a lot of people are, because it is, we do some pre-tapes. We prefer live interviews. I think it's more spontaneous and it sounds better. But there are people that get nervous, and it's understandable. You're going out over a 50,000 watt signal. In fact, I kid with people when we do live remotes, and we're visible, you know, to a crowd. I'll say, you know, don't even pay any attention to the fact that you're going out over a 50,000 watt signal to the entire Beltway area. Don't even give that a second thought. And
then of course they think about it, right?
That's all they think about. But in general, we don't have too many people actually, almost never do they have a crash and burn on the air. And the reason is very simple. When we have the program manager that I mentioned today for that CMS program, or we have someone that has done something, you know, in the government, we have the winners of the Service to America medals come on and talk about what they've done. They don't need any real preparation, because their life's work is their preparation for that interview. And if you ask someone about their passion and their life's work and the thing that occupies all of their time when they're awake and at the office, how do you need preparation to talk? They could talk about it for an hour without any problem.
Because they're very passionate about it and they understand, and it's natural. So what advice do you give that person? Do you just ask them to suggest that they...
Well, when we invite a guest, we tell them what we want to talk about. And we're not interested in ambushing people or having them fail on the air. So I'm fine with coming up with a schedule of questions. This is generally what we're going to ask you. But I also tell people it's not an interrogation where I have a script and we're not going to deviate from it. It's a conversation. It's a back and forth. It's an interview. It's not an interrogation. And so the interviews pretty much follow what it is that we want to cover and that they know we want to cover, so they can think about the answers in advance. But the one thing that will get me to try to knock someone off is if I can sense that they're reading the answers. And sometimes this happens with DOD because the public affairs officers feel, I got to be useful here. Let's write out the answers to the questions. And trust me, I know when you're reading. And if you're reading, I will interrupt and ask a question to throw you off that script. Because it's not fair to the audience, and it loses all the spontaneity. And then it doesn't really sound like an interview. It sounds like a recitation, and we don't want that. Right.
So what about going on broadcast television? You'd mentioned earlier to me before the show that some people prefer to be on radio than television. What if someone needs to go on air?
Well, if they need to go on television, I mean, television's not that tough. The anchors are very, first of all, television segments tend to be much shorter for outside guests than our interviews are about 10 minutes long. But on television, and I've done a few television appearances from time to time, and the thing is, you don't look at the camera like I'm doing right now. Talk to the host. You know, sometimes it's a double host. Again, just be yourself. Television, you got to remember to sit up straight, you know, and not slouch like this. But
am I slouching?
And unlike, and the other thing about television, you can't have notes really in any kind of way that's not awkward, like you can on radio, because nobody can see you. And so just rehearse what it is you want to cover, the points you want to cover, but just be yourself, sit up straight, talk to the guests, forget about the camera, and it's really easy.
Yeah, one of the things that we'll tell our clients or advise our clients is that, because a lot of them will get nervous if they go on broadcast, since most of our clients are B2B and B2G, and they do make technology products. They're not necessarily prime time for live television, if you will. So, but every once in a while they will be. So we suggest that at least you know what 3 things you want to say. It's kind of like being a politician, I suppose. You know, what 3 things do you want to say, and then you can probably weave those 3 things in that are not self-serving, but that help get the point across, so that at least you know you've left saying those particular things.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's brand new and they've never been doing a media broadcast before, I mean, it's not a bad idea to have someone ask you the questions in kind of a mock, you know, run through for it. And I've been thrown off by like silly questions from TV anchors a couple of times, like, what? That's got nothing to do with anything. Right. Because, look, they're like all of us. We're covering a million topics, and every day there's 5 or 6 different things we have to learn. And I go home, my wife says, what was on the show today? I said, I can't remember. You know, it's cache memory. You use it, and then it's gone when you turn off. So But if you rehearse the questions a little bit and kind of think about, get comfortable with what you want to say, then you just go in and be yourself. I mean, that's the most important thing, is to be yourself. Because understand that as a representative of a company or an agency, you're talking about what you do every day.
Right.
And if there was no microphone and there was no camera and you were asked about, what do? You would talk for half an hour with no notes and you wouldn't even think about it.
Right.
That's the mode you need to be in for broadcast.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's always surprised me, is that it will go so fast. And when we've advised clients, particularly on whether it's radio or broadcast, how am I going to talk for an hour? Oh, you trust me, it'll go so fast, especially because you take breaks all the time. And
well, an hour's not really an hour. It's about 44 minutes or something.
So, yeah, it's interesting. We had one of our clients on your show. It was probably about a couple of months ago or so. It just went so fast. I mean, I had so much more to say. Well, that's probably a good thing, but it's not, you need to think about, speaking in sound bites. And
when I have to end and get to the commercials, there's much more I wanted to ask.
Right.
And so that's a sign of a good interview.
Right. Well, what else is a good sign of a good interview?
Well,
what do you think?
I mean, if you want to, raise it a notch, and you're being on, broadcasting is all about energy. Mm-hmm. Because if you're into it, then the listeners or the viewers can tell you're into it, and that says to them, wow, well, maybe I'm into it also.
Right.
But if you're slouching, or if you're talking like this,
body language
doesn't seem like. And for us, I mean, there's something I had to learn coming into this as a second career, that the way you talk for broadcasting is a little bit amped up from what you would talk normally. But then after a while, you find you talk that way all the time.
Right.
It becomes a way of life.
Right.
The quality of enthusiasm is important to broadcasting, but it's also important to everything you do in life. Mm-hmm. And so not everyone expresses enthusiasm through their voice. I mean, enthusiasm can be a quiet kind of intensity, but if you can find a way to just bring it up front, you'll do better. And it feeds off itself. The more energetic you act, the more energetic you are.
Right.
The more energy you actually have.
Right. I always like to think that it comes through at some point. Even if you're not able to see, if you're smiling into the radio, microphone, it's probably coming through to a certain extent.
And that's why the interviews are tailored to what we think the person is qualified to talk about. You wouldn't ask someone who is involved in rapid application development, should Mussolini have invaded Ethiopia? We wouldn't ask that.
Right.
Or vice versa.
Right.
So,
exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. People come on here or on, and they're talking about something they've learned and earned the right to talk about because it's their life's work. And so it's a lot easier than it sounds.